Did you know that if a parent has bipolar disorder, the child has a 10 to 25% chance of developing bipolar disorder? If you or one of your children has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I brought a dad on the program diagnosed along with his child with bipolar disorder. He will share his experience and insights with us in just a moment, so don't go anywhere.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My guest is George Brooks. I asked George to come and talk to us about his life growing up with bipolar diagnosis and then raising a son with the same diagnosis. George, thank you so much for coming on the Fatherhood Challenge.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
George, let's start with an explanation of bipolar disorder. What is bipolar disorder?
Well, bipolar disorder is characterized by mood swings. Those mood swings can go from extreme depression to what's called mania. And when you're in a manic state, you're very high energy. You usually have a sense of elation. During that time, that's when a lot of people find themselves getting into trouble because your impulsivity is really bad off. So when someone's manic, they really have to be watched and monitored. But it can fluctuate between a depressed state to where you can't get out of bed to a manic state to where could be exhibiting risky behavior and things like that. So that's typically what bipolar disorder is kind of described as. I know back in the 60s, they called it manic depression. So it's the same thing, but it's just characterized between, mood swings that can be controlled or not controlled with medication.
How many people do you think approximately might be undiagnosed just because of how the definition changed from the 60s till today?
I don't think I think the verbiage changed. However, I don't think the definition changed all that much. Now, the thing with diagnosing bipolar disorder is that it can look like so many different things, so many different, physical conditions, mental conditions. I mean, if you have a bad thyroid, some of the symptoms from that could look like bipolar. So in order to diagnose it accurately, there really has to be a thorough medical exam, physically and mentally, to diagnose it. But I think people are being misdiagnosed, yes, only because, like I said, it masks so many different illnesses.
So if someone thinks they have it, it sounds like it's important that they don't try to self-diagnose and instead they seek professional help. So to get a diagnosis or confirm a diagnosis, would they go to a psychiatrist for that?
I always urge people to go to their physician also, get a physical checkout to go ahead and rule that out as being a possible cause for any symptoms. Then, of course, follow up with a therapist and a psychiatrist and get help for that and get an examination and see if you can get an official diagnosis. Also, with that diagnosis, you may find that it's not bipolar. It may be something else that's unrelated that you can get treatment for as well.
And if it is a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, is it treated with medication and therapy, or what does the outcome look like for that?
Well, see, that's the thing. When you're bipolar, you really have to individualize your care to what's going to work for you. And it's so many different variables that go into it, such as your age, your economic situation, what stage you are in life, what stage you are in your illness. So what worked for me, because I also had a concurrent cocaine addiction. So I had to treat both of those at the same time. But my formula was the therapy, which I ignored for a long time until I actually got into therapy 6 years ago and realized the value of it. And I combined that with my medication and holistic approaches, such as making sure I do my self-care, making sure that I'm taking time, taking breaks. So that in combination with the medication and therapy does help give me balance. The thing is, even if you're treating bipolar disorder, you're still going to have fluctuations. You're still going to have ups and downs. But the medication, the therapy, and the holistic approach can help keep you balanced to where you can kind of minimize those. And at the very least, if you have a good support system, and I don't want to leave that out, it's key to have a good support system because people can also tell if you're starting to go into a manic state and help intervene. They may say, George, I noticed you're a little erratic today. You okay? And sometimes that can go a long way because that's what I've done with my son, Joshua. He was diagnosed about age 7, and we sort of fill that role with each other. So there's a lot to treating bipolar disorder. There's a lot to managing it. managing it, but the thing is, it can be managed.
What is your story of being diagnosed and growing up with bipolar disorder?
Wow. I started showing symptoms about age 7, when I was about 7 years old, which is coincidentally the same age my son was diagnosed. He was diagnosed at 7, and I started showing symptoms at 7. Growing up with it was very, very interesting in the sense that my parents were not the norm in terms of many black parents because they believed in getting help. They didn't say, "Well, you're not going to church enough," or "That's not real." They said, "No, there's something going on. We need to treat it, and you can't just pray this away." So that really started my mindset to being active about my treatment. But due to extenuating circumstances through adolescence, it was not easy for me. Dealt with some a lot of trauma. My early life dealt with family issues, dealt with health issues, chronic health issues from about age 7 that still are on me to this day. Dealt with the pressure of being an adolescent. Dealt with an eating disorder where I was obese most of my teenage years. So you add all that in, and then you juxtapose that with a society that does not understand mental illness, especially in the black community, and you're going to have a problem. So it was very challenging coming up. It was very challenging dealing with things, but I made it through. And I think at age 46, I've formulated a system and a way of living with bipolar disorder that's been beneficial to myself and my son.
So it sounds like the deck was really stacked against you as far as figuring this out. You had so many different challenges going on in your life. And this comes back to understanding what you said earlier. When I asked you, is the treatment pretty straightforward? Is it just pop a pill and get therapy and that's it? You're good to go. And you said no because everyone's circumstance is so different. And
Right.
so what is required to manage it likewise is very different. And when you explained some of the circumstances that you were going through, that was really complicated. How long did it take them to figure out something that was going to work for you?
uh, what day is it? Because here's the thing. You typically with bipolar disorder, once you get your official diagnosis, which I was given mine at age 25, it typically takes, and I've heard different numbers on this, about 10 years for them to find a cocktail of medications that's effective. I've been on so many different medications since all my life, trying to find a routine that works. You may find three or four drugs that make a cocktail that may work beautifully with your bipolar for 6 months, for a year, if you're lucky, 2 years. But your body chemistry changes. You're dealing with the chemical imbalance, and you're dealing with the you know external stimuli of real life. So things are going to be changing so much, and there's so many new drugs, and they have so many different effects and things like that. It's really tough to find a a combination that works. Now they typically go with an antidepressant, a mood stabilizer, and something for mania. That's usually what they do. They usually give three. For a long time, I was on lithium, which, if you know anything about lithium, it's extremely, extremely effective, but the side effects are so bad, I can't take it. I wish I could, but I can't. So that's one of the challenges too, is that there being an effective medication, but you can't take it for whatever reason, whether it be side effects or availability or cost. That's a chronic health issue being bipolar. You have to take meds every day, usually multiple times a day. And that's something to manage too, because a lot of times your insurance will not cover it if you have insurance. So there's so much that goes into managing it just from a pharmaceutical level and from a therapeutic level. But the life management skills is what's really important. And that's one thing I speak on. It's the overall life management and people management and time management that goes into the bipolar disorder, because it's a constant. It's always there. It's always there. Um, and the sad thing is that oftentimes you can't even have a good day without questioning, am I manic? If I have a good day, I'm so worried. Am I having a good day because I'm really having a good day, or am I having a good day because I'm manic, or it's just real? So that's something I encounter all the time. So that's another part that makes it a little bit difficult to deal with. But it can, like I said, it can be managed as long as you have the right, right apparatus in place, and you have the right support system.
You mentioned your son was also diagnosed. How early did you say he was diagnosed? And what were some of the signs that you picked up on that was your clue?
He's 19 now, so he was diagnosed about age 7. Some of the symptoms I saw were mood swings, being very overly emotional. Um, I just felt it. I just felt it. My wife at the time really saw it too, and we got him diagnosed and everything. Now he lived with his mother. He and his mother and I are not together. He lived with his mother. She had primary custody up until a certain point. And one of the things in raising a child with bipolar disorder is that unfortunately sometimes you have another parent to deal with. Um, you have their family to deal with, and especially depending on how ignorant they are, they may fight you on getting your child care. That's what I dealt with. I couldn't get my son all his medications like I wanted to because I was had a combative relationship with her and her family. So that got in the way a lot. But I went and fought for custody of him, was given custody of him. And even then it's still a challenge because he has his own ideas about his treatment, especially as a teenager. I don't think I need medicine. I don't think I need this. I think I need that. And that's another challenge in raising a bipolar child is that you do have to educate them, make them feel safe, teach them how to manage. But also there'll be times when you'll butt heads with them over their treatment because you may be older and have experience and know what's best. But at the same time, you have to individualize that for your child. So it can be quite complicated.
Was it helpful at all for your son to understand that you're going through and have gone through the exact same thing and you're walking this journey together?
I think it's one of those things that's really, but we've always been extremely close, but it's a bond that we have because if I'm manic or if I'm having a good day, he'll tell me, Dad, I can tell something's wrong. And we kind of keep each other in check like that. So I think he understands what I go through. I definitely, especially not only the fact that we're both bipolar, but I'm his father. I can pick up on his moods. I can look at him and tell, okay, this is going on or that's going on. And what I'll do at that point, or what he'll do at that point, is that we'll pull each other inside and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about what's going on. We'll talk about the medication. That's been such a fortunate thing for me to be able to have that kind of relationship, with my son.
What are some of the stereotypes associated with bipolar disorder, and how does that contrast with the truth?
That is somehow a character flaw, especially in the black community. You're seen as less than. You can tell them you drown a bag of puppies, they won't say a word. But you tell them you have a mental illness, and I swear they will run from you. What the truth is that it's just an illness, just like anything else. It's just like my diabetes. It's just like my heart defects. It's just like other things I have going on with me physically, which is a lot. I just have to manage it just the same way I would anything else. Just like I have to take my mood stabilizer, my antidepressant, my 2 or 3 other meds I take for my bipolar. I have to take my insulin. So a good hour, couple of hours of my day every day is just spent managing medications, managing how I'm feeling, managing, my health care. So, but that's the thing that people don't think about. They just think, oh, he has a mental illness. He's somehow a character flaw, or he's somehow deficient, or he's somehow incapable of doing the same things I can do. No, that's not the case.
So, your lifestyle, other than treating the illnesses that you have, doesn't really differ from really anybody else. You are not limited. You can participate in the same activities that everybody else does.
Right. Well, sometimes now with special accommodations given sometimes because bipolar is a debilitating mental illness. It really is. So you may not be able to work a 9 to 5. Most people with bipolar aren't going to be able to work a 9 to 5 effectively, not without many accommodations. They aren't going to be able to do a lot of things to the fullest extent of everybody else without taking into consideration their illness. So that's the only thing about it. But I've been able to function pretty well on my own. I pretty much know me doing a regular 9 to 5 is never going to happen just because of health reasons. So I'm trying to find other ways to generate revenue for myself. And so I've taken that path in life.
As far as special accommodations are concerned, does that fall under the Americans with Disability Act?
Yes, but I feel like we need to expand it to include more mental health specific protocols such as time off, break time, things specifically geared toward mental health because in terms of physical health, that's easier for people to see most of the time. But you're dealing with something as abstract as mental health, and especially from a legislative standpoint, it's hard to mandate things in place to deal with mental illness when you can't see it, or people still have such a stigmatized concept of what it is to have a mental illness. And it's funny because it's the one thing that truly does affect everyone of every race and color, but we all aren't dealing with it the same way. All of us are affected by mental illness, either directly or indirectly. But the thing is we're still having to overcome stereotypes. We're still having to have these discussions. And my hopes in the next 20, 30 years, we can ease up on a lot of the rhetoric that's involved with these conversations and seek out real care. But as far as accommodations, might be work from home, might be I need time off, maybe I need to work in a different department, or maybe you can't deal with people. But as long as the accommodation doesn't affect the profitability and efficiency of the company, I think they should be adhered to when at all possible.
So the bottom line is if somebody's diagnosed, they really have to advocate for themselves because the education to the general public just isn't there to really understand what's going on.
No, and I started a nonprofit about 6 years ago called Meta Association, and what I do is I advocate for people. So if you can't, even if you can advocate for yourself, there may be a time when you may be sick and you can't. So make sure you know of an advocate that can come in and assist you, especially dealing with mental health, because that extra support is going to go a long way. Especially if you have any cognitive deficiencies because of the mental illness, or if you have any communication problems, or when you're in crisis, you can't communicate the same way. And so I'm a staunch advocate for advocates, myself included.
How can a dad best support their spouse or child who has been diagnosed? And let's say this is a very new diagnosis to them.
Educate themselves and get into support groups and practice self care. Educate themselves, get in support groups, practice self care. Those are the three best things you can do. Educate yourself so you understand the illness. So you have a concept of what it is, what kind of medications are used for their particular illness, how can it affect them, what are the side effects. Get in support groups just to support yourself and get experience and hear the stories from other people. Because for one thing, that'll let you know you're not the only one. And the thing about being a parent with a mentally ill child is that sometimes you feel so isolated, you feel as though you're the only one. But not only that, there's a lot of self blame involved. You ask yourself, well, what did I do? Or what's wrong with me? Did I pass this down? And those things just happen. My bipolarism in my family is genetic. Okay. And I didn't have anything to do with me getting it or him getting it, but we have to deal with it. So that's part of where the support system comes in. And third is self care. Understand that you can't run yourself ragged to take care of anyone and think you're going to do them any good. So take time off, do self care, get in therapy yourself. That's another tremendous asset. If you're a caretaker of a child or anyone with a mental or any illness, get in therapy. Get into a place where you can talk those things out because they will come up and they will build up. So just to reiterate, it's going to be self care, it's going to be educating yourself, and it's going to be support groups.
So when you get a therapist, one of the things to expect, and a lot of it, maybe this was the same with you, a lot of therapists will actually screen for that in their application process. They will ask that at some point for medical diagnosis like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
because it does change what they do for treatment, how they treat you in therapy.
Right, especially in terms of medication, because I have to get blood work every month. Just because the medications I'm on and my health issues, it may affect my internal organs or something like that. So, yeah, they really and they've gotten a lot better about it in the past few years. Really, kind of coincide your physical health with your mental health, and making sure that you're on the right medications that cause as few side effects as possible.
Now, as far as a single parent situation, is it helpful to have an advocate that works with that specific situation?
As far as being a single parent, what's really important is to advocate for yourself, advocate for your child, but have resources in place. Have your therapist on speed dial. Have the school counselor on speed dial. Try to surround yourself with people that really care about you and the child that aren't going to bring any drama to it. Um, Being a single parent is really about who you surround yourself with. It really is, especially when you're dealing with a child with a mental illness or another health crisis. So, and one thing I've seen with a lot of people that are also parents dealing with mentally ill children, they didn't have a support system, so that affected them to their detriment. But it's important to build that support system and build your advocate team. Have a plan for when someone does get sick to go inpatient. Have a plan if anything happens. Treat it like it's a fire hazard. And that's really how you have to address your mental illness. You have to have things already in place that you can do should something go wrong.
What role did faith play in helping you just to maintain your stability and helping you to just survive from day to day?
It had a tremendous effect. For a long time, I ran from God. I ran from spirituality. Up until about 6 years ago, when I decided to get off the cocaine, get off the drugs, and try to fix myself and heal myself, I began to talk to God. But God lives in me, so I spend all my time praying. I do all that. I believe that my faith is important to me because I have my own personal relationship with God that's not dictated or predetermined by anyone else or their standards. And until I learned that, something was missing in my relationship with God. But when I learned it's my relationship, and it doesn't have to look like your relationship, and it doesn't have to be like your relationship, and it's a unique thing to me and my spirituality and my heart, that's when I found a great sense of peace.
A lot of times we think that we are alone with
Mm-hmm.
dealing with some of this stuff, and you're absolutely right. Faith looks different for everybody, and it should. My faith should not be yours, or it's not really faith. Walk us through that process of how God really transformed your life, specific things that He changed in you.
It started me on a path of healing myself, of realizing that therapy could be beneficial to me, of taking a lot of accountability for things in my life that I was the cause of. Before we try to heal or recover in life, we have to look in the mirror and acknowledge what we are responsible for in terms of our lives being at that point where we need to recover. And the reason I say that is there's often a way of doing things where we put it on everybody else. Well, my ex-wife did this and my brother did this. And well, first you have to look in the mirror first before you can hold those people accountable. And one thing that God allowed me to do was allow me to accept the fact that even though I'm holding those people accountable, I can't expect them to respond the way I want them to. I may want closure, but maybe what I got is just what I got in terms of closure. So my relationship with God taught me to accept a lot of things. It taught me to kind of harden my heart a little bit, not be so trusting, and a lot of that comes with faith.
I think for me, the biggest game changer was forgiveness when I really learned to forgive. And that doesn't just limit to human beings. You can forgive situations, circumstances that were put on you, deserving or undeserving. It doesn't make any difference. But there is a power in forgiveness, and one of the greatest definitions that I heard about forgiveness is that it's like walking into a courtroom and you have the gavel and you decide you're done. You don't want to judge anymore. And you walk up to God and you hand him the gavel and you're just saying, I'm done. Here, you judge. And that there is a freedom in that. I wonder if that's a little bit of a taste of kind of what you went through spiritually.
Yeah, yeah. Learning to trust God and have faith. And that faith is built over time. It's not like you wake up one day and talk to God, oh, okay, I have faith. No, it's built over time. And it has to be tested, otherwise it's not faith. Because faith without being tested is nothing but obedience and dogma. And that's not what you want in a relationship with God. You want to have faith. You want to really believe. You don't want to do something just because, okay, the Bible says I should do this, so I'll do this and not feel it. And I think this is what a lot of so-called Christians do is that they quote Bible scripture all day, but when it comes to the real work or the real living with God, they don't do it. They can't do it. They don't know how to do it. They know how to make it look good, but they don't know how to do it. So, it's not how loud you shout in the pulpit. It's not how hard you bang your tambourine. Is when you're alone and going through it, how earnestly do you talk to God?
What are some resources for dads facing bipolar disorder?
My nonprofit Meta Association, you can reach us at 214-810-6518. As far as resources, it's not really a lot. There's really something right now and resources for men and things to help men. Because I think for a long time we've ignored ourselves and we've been ignored, especially black men, especially. So we're looking at ways to build resources to where we can have things to where we can get the help we need without having to wait on someone to do it for us. So, the greatest resource is just going to be, just hunting out different nonprofits, different men's groups. Facebook has good support groups. Just try to make your way right now while we try to build up what we need as men for ourselves, just like the women have to support themselves. But we have to build it ourselves. No one's going to do that for us.
Just to make things easier, if you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode, look right below the episode description. I'm going to have the organization that George started. I'm going to have his organization posted right below the episode description for your convenience. George, as we close, what is your challenge to that dad listening now?
I challenge you to grow. I challenge you to be patient with yourself, to treat yourself like a seed that you have to water, that you have to cultivate, that you have to nurture to get to reap the harvest that you want to reap from yourself. The thing you have to keep in mind when you plant a seed, it's dark, it's wet, it's cold, it's unpleasant, but that's part of the growth process. You have to understand that's the same process that we go through as men. And find support systems, find healthy ways to deal with things, find positive things. Try to keep your heart young, especially if you're a parent. Spend time with your kids as much as you can. Just try to live life, but try to live with a sense of purpose. And even if you're not a believer, believe in something other than yourself. And try to follow that. And once you define your purpose, pursue it with your whole heart, regardless of anything. And I think that's our purpose as men, is to have our purpose and to pursue it. It's not to sit up there and get married and pay bills. It's not to do this. It's not to do this, but to a purpose. Not a dream, not an ambition, because dreams are temporary. Dreams are fleeting. You can achieve your dream in one day, and then what? But what is your purpose? Because the purpose is the one thing that carries you throughout your whole life. And part of my purpose is being a father, and I'm proud and happy to be one.
So the overall theme here is that every father, every dad must know and find their identity and purpose. That is the number one priority. Without that, you are not complete. And without that, you don't know who you are.
Yes, sir.
George, it has been absolutely an honor having you on the Fatherhood Challenge. Thank you so much for sharing your story with dads out there.
Thank you. And thank everyone out there, too. I really appreciate you all taking the time to listen to me. And I wish everyone nothing but blessings and the very best.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.